How to play fingerstyle or fingerpicking guitar, lesson 28. And this is 2 finger picking patterns, part 2, a Spanish study. As the name suggests, this is lesson 28 of the GCH Guitar Academy fingerstyle guitar course. So if you're unfamiliar with it, I'll put the playlist down below in the description in case you need to go through it. But even if you've already got a background playing fingerstyle guitar, you might still need to go through lesson 27, as it explains the technique and goes through some important exercises to build up to this particular lesson. So I'll put a link to lesson 27, as well as a link to the playlist, and also how to get hold of the tablature down below in the description. Right, let's get on with it. Lesson 28, Spanish study. The first thing I need to point out before we start on this tune is the fact that it's in 6/4 time, which is a time signature we've never done before, and it's 6 crotchets per bar. The second thing I'll point out is that we'll be dealing with this tune in 2 sections, section 1 and section 2. And the reason for this is each section is quite a lot different from the other. And it's almost like 2 tunes in actual fact. Right, let's go through the first section. Spanish study, section 1. This section is made easier because of the fact that you repeat several of the bars over and over again. So for example, if you take a look at the first bar, this bar repeats in bar 2 and bar 3, but also again later in the tune in bar 9, 10 and 11. And if we take a look at bar 5, this repeats for bar 6 and 7. So between those 2 bars, we've got most of the tune. Outside of these 2 bars, we've just got bar 4 to learn, bar 8 to learn, and the last 3 bars of section 1. Right then, let's get started with the first bar. And you'll notice that we're just using the primary and the middle finger. However, if you struggle with this, you can use the index finger. But before we take a look at the note the index or the middle finger's playing, let's cover the notes that the primary finger's playing, because this is the main tune. So we'll just play that first in a loop a couple of times to get used to it. Now, this tune is in open position, so we should be playing this first section with the first fret played by the first finger, the second fret played by the second finger, and the third fret played by the third finger. So, when playing this first bar, you should only be using the second and the third finger. Here's just the thumb part of the first bar being played 3 times at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Remember, there's 6 beats in the bar in this tune. I think this thumb part is pretty easy on its own, so here it is again at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again, one last time. So now we'll reintroduce the top E string being played with the middle finger between each note. And we'll try that first at 90 beats per minute, 3 times with a 2-bar introduction. Here that is again, but this time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. However, if you feel you need to practice a bit longer at 90 beats per minute, I've put some metronome beats at various speeds at the end of this video, so you've got them to practice with. Here that is again, one last time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Before we learn bar 4, we'll learn bar 5. So you can hear how similar it is to bar 1, and it also repeats 3 times. And as we did with bar 1, we'll first learn the thumb part before introducing the top part, which this time is on the B string. Here's just the thumb part being played 3 times at 90 beats per minute with the 2-bar introduction. You'll notice that in this part, there's only one note that's different to the thumb part in part 1, and that's the first note of the bar. Here it is being played again, but this time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here that is again, one last time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Right, let's introduce the top note, which is being played on the B string, and you'll notice this time I'm playing it with the index finger. Here it is at 90 beats per minute. Right, let's try and speed that up straight away to 100 beats per minute with the 2-bar introduction. And here that is again, one last time. Right, let's move on and take a look at the fourth bar, which joins these two sections we've learnt together. And as we did with the previous bars we've learnt, firstly we'll learn how to play the part played by the thumb. Unlike the previous bars we've learnt, this bar doesn't need to be repeated. So here it is being played, just the thumb part, at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again at 90 beats per minute, in case you want to try and play along with me. Let's hear that once more at 90 beats per minute, but this time we'll reintroduce the middle finger, so you're playing the top E string as well. Let's try that once more, but this time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again, one last time at 100 beats per minute. As I said earlier, that pattern joins the first two patterns we've learnt together. So now we've learnt all the way down to bar 7. So here's the first 7 bars being played with a 2-bar introduction at 100 beats per minute. You don't have to play along with it yet. Just listen to how the fourth bar joins the 3 bars before it to the 3 bars after it. Let's hear that again at the same speed with a 2-bar introduction. If you think you're ready, try playing along. Right, let's move on and take a look at bar 8, because bar 8 is another connecting bar. So by learning this bar, we will have learned all the way down to bar 11. As you can see, bar 8 is a continuation on the 2-finger pattern that we've used throughout this exercise. So we'll learn it the same way, in that we'll learn the thumb part first and then add the B string later. Here's the thumb part being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again, this time at 100 beats per minute, if you want to try and play along. Now let's introduce the index finger, so we're playing the complete bar now, and we'll hear it at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Right, we'll hear that one last time at 100 beats per minute, just in case you want to try and play along with it. Now, after we've played bar 8, we just play bar 1 3 times after that to take us all the way up to bar 11. Here that is being played then from the first bar to the 11th bar with a 2-bar introduction at 100 beats per minute. It's probably a good idea to listen to it the first time so you get an idea how it should sound. Here that is again with a 2-bar introduction at 100 beats per minute. If you think you're ready, try and play along with it. Rather than playing this through again, we might as well learn the last 3 bars and then we'll know the entire of section 1. Which, if you prefer, you can treat just this section as a tune in its own right, or you can add it to section 2, which we'll look at in a bit. Now, these 3 bars do need some explaining, and in fact the whole tune does. This tune, really, it shouldn't be played with a metronome. In a perfect situation, you want it to be an open time format, so you can speed up and slow down slightly. But for the first 11 bars, it's actually easier to learn it with a metronome because it's very rhythmic. And without the metronome playing in the background, you wouldn't be able to play along with me. However, these last 4 chords should really be played complete open time, so you can decide what gap you're going to put between them. But so you can play along with me, I'm going to put a count to them just for the time being. Now, the chords in these 3 bars are chords you've done before, except for one. So you should know the E major chord and the A minor chord. However, the F major 7 add B, even though it sounds really hard, you literally just take the open E shape and move it up by a fret. Right, here's the end of the first section being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. But I'm going to add an extra bar, so I'll play the last 4 bars. And I've added the extra bar just so it sounds better and makes more sense. Here that is again, one more time, at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. See if you can play along with it if you can. But don't worry if you can't, just practice it. Right, let's try and bring that up in speed slightly to 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Again, try and play along with it if you think you're ready. Right, let's hear that one last time at 100 beats per minute before we bring the whole of section 1 together. Before we bring the whole of section 1 together, I'll just explain how I'm strumming these chords. Because obviously, when you're playing fingerstyle, you can't just pick up a plectrum. So you need to do it fingerstyle as well. And to some degree, this introduces some very basic flamenco elements. In that with flamenco guitar, you use your fingers to strum the guitar as well as pick it. In this lesson, I'll just show you what I'm doing very quickly, but in a later lesson, we will go into these techniques in far more detail. And the first one would be just to strum down using your index finger, straight down the guitar. And you could do exactly the same thing with the primary finger or the thumb. Or if you feel adventurous, you can actually use your annular, middle and index finger in that order, dragging them down, following one another. And you'll find this last technique in both flamenco and mariachi guitar. But don't worry if you can't play this yet. I'm just giving you something to experiment with. And to play this tune through, I'll just use the index finger in a simple strumming manner. Here's the whole of section 1 at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, in case you'd like to play along with it. Here that is again at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Now, here's the tune in open time to give you a good idea how you eventually want it to sound. Obviously, you don't need to try and play along with this. Spanish Study, Section 2. The second section of this Spanish study is only 3 lines long, or really 2 lines long, because if you look at the first 2 lines, they're identical. You'll also notice that those 2 lines are in repeats, and I'm going to leave it open and down to you how many times you do those repeats, because the whole idea of this section is to play that first line and then keep repeating it, slowly building up the speed until you're going as fast as you can go, and then you move on to the third line. Now, even though the idea of that first line is to keep speeding it up, we'll learn it with a metronome so you can play along with me. So let's take a look at that first line. And the first bar is really easy. You just make an incomplete E major chord shape and then play the finger picking pattern over the top of it. So it looks like this. Here's that bar being played again with a 2-bar introduction at 90 beats per minute. Try playing along with it because it's quite easy. Here's that bar again, but this time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Once you've got this bar, you'll be pleased to know you've got half of section 2, as this bar repeats, and half of the bar repeats in the last line. Right, let's take a look at the next bar. Unfortunately though, this bar is more difficult because it contains an open F chord, and I know a lot of people have trouble with that chord. If you do have difficulty with the open F chord, I've made a video just about how to play that chord, and I'll put the link to that down below in the description. There is a bit of good news, however, in that you never have to play the complete F major chord, just parts of it. Right, let's take a look at this being done just with the fingering hand. The first thing we have to do is place the first finger across the first fret of the top E string and the B string, and place the second finger on the second fret of the G string. You can now play the first 3 or 4 notes of the picking pattern, and somewhere between the 3rd note and the 5th note you slide the first finger across so it's only covering the 1st fret on the top E string. You can now continue the picking pattern up until the 8th note. Somewhere between the 7th note and the 9th note, you remove the second finger from the 2nd fret of the G string so you can play the open string, whilst keeping the first finger on the 1st fret of the top E string. And you can place the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the D string. Now, throughout this bar, you have to keep the first finger on the first fret of the top E string, and basically that's the only finger that stays in place. Here's line 1 and 2 of section 2, just watching the fingering hand again. Once you can play those first 2 bars, you can basically play the whole of the second section. To finish the section though, you play the same chords we played earlier, in that you play an E major, then slide the E major shape up a fret and play that, and finally return to a standard E major and strum that. Here's the whole of section 2 being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, ignoring the repeat. And here that is again with a 2-bar introduction, but this time at 100 beats per minute. And this is how section 2 should sound with a repeat open time. I've just done it here as per the tab, but because of the improvisational nature of this particular tune, you could actually start a lot slower and build up to a lot faster, just using many more repeats. This is obviously just an outline for you to build on. And that concludes our lesson for today. At the end of this video, you'll find metronome beats at 90 beats per minute and 100 beats per minute, in case you need those for practicing. So I'll sign out now. If you're new to this channel and enjoyed this lesson, I've put a link to the playlist down below in the description. And I'll be uploading new lessons regularly. So if you want to see those, please like, subscribe and hit the bell icon. And if you want to take a look through all the other free lessons I've got available, you can find them at www.ebooks4guitar.com. And there's loads of short courses and lessons completely free, but you can buy some PDFs if you want to help support the channel. Thank you very much for watching and hope you'll be back soon.